Hey guys, welcome to Excessive Football Talk. I'm Tate Hedinger.
I'm Blake Barnard.
We're going to be talking about some football today. So to introduce ourselves, I'm Tate, Vikings fan, diehard, but I'm a realistic fan. So we want to break down the top teams in free agency, who's winning, who's losing, who's doing decent.
I guess I'll introduce myself too. My name is Blake. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so of course you know who I'm cheering for. Seattle Seahawks. I'm the opposite. I'm an unrealistic fan. I think we're winning the Super Bowl every year. No, I'm realistic. I understand where our team's going. Anyways, I think we got some exciting topics to talk about, and I look forward to getting into it. Episode 1, Season 1.
Yeah, first episode. So, who's winning free agency right now? I know a lot of teams are making some moves. Some teams, I feel like half of them are just not making moves because they can't, or a lot of teams aren't spending the money they have. You know, we look at the Patriots, we look at the Chargers. They have money, they're not spending it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, are you trying to compete next year or not? But let's go through our winners. Our first one, there's not real any order to this. I'd say Commanders. Commanders are just winning this pretty well. And it really kind of is dependent on how people are going to play. Like, so Debo, for example, I say it's a good pickup. But do you get Debo last year? Or are you getting some motivated, high-energy, thinner Debo Samuel?
Yeah, I don't really know. That's a good question. Who's the offensive coordinator for
Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff? Oh, yeah, that's right.
So Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to get him open. He's going to get him targets. They know how to... Cliff is a great OC, so I have no problems with that. He's teaming up with Terry McLaurin. Debo's not even the number one on the team, and he doesn't have to be. They just re-signed Noah Brown, too, who was a very solid number 3. And I still think they have just Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
Who is coming on pretty good towards the end of the year last year. I think he's got a lot of potential. So they re-signed tight end John Bates. They re-signed the quitter Marcus Mariota. If you guys remember that guy, what's his deal? Was it like the Falcons? He quit like mid-season because like he just didn't want to be there. It's like, okay, dude, be a Kirk Cousins at least and take your paycheck. But you know, so they go moving on from him. Laramie Tunsil. You get Laramie Tunsil from the Texans for pretty much a bag of balls for what this guy's worth. I mean, it's insane. A third, let's see. Yeah, they get a Laramie Tunsil and a 4th round pick in exchange for the 3rd and 7th pick. Are you kidding me? Oh, and then 2nd and 4th in 2026. All right, that's okay. But Laramie Tunsil is a solid left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He beefs up the line. It's an automatic upgrade. I don't know what the Texans are doing, but we'll get in that later.
Yeah, I like what the Redskins are doing, actually, after you named all that kind of stuff. Like, Debo, he is. I think he has kind of been injury-prone recently these last couple of years, so he does need maybe a year to get his legs up under him. And I think that him not being the number one is going to kind of free him up to do that. You also have, I think, their one wide receivers, he's a deep threat. So he can open up the field, he can go long, and Jane Daniels got that cannon to throw it to him, which will actually let Debo do what he does best, and that's kind of use him in the backfield to like run those bubble screens, to take handoffs so that he can run through. And with those upgrades on the line, you know, that'll definitely help with that, especially with how dynamic Jaden Daniels is. Like, he's basically an extra running back that they have behind center. So I think that their offense is going to be really potent with what they're going. And yeah, definitely with Cliff Kingsbury as their OC, he didn't do well in AZ, but every other quarterback that he's touched, every other offense that he touched is, you know, an amazing offense, college and now we're starting to see in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the Commanders' defense is pretty solid. They are losing some guys, St. Juice, and I think another guy, but they're doing a good job of getting some more filler guys. Their defense was doing great last year. They just signed Eddie Goldman, Sheldon Day, Dietrich Wise, all defensive line kind of guys, and I think they're pretty good. They signed Javon Kinlaw to a contract, which I think it's a little arbitrary based on what he's been doing lately. But a 3-year, $45 million contract, if he gets back to anywhere where he could be, that's a great contract. So they also got Bobby Wagner.
I was just about to say,
the former Seahawks guy.
Old reliable.
Old reliable. This guy just never stops.
No, he doesn't. He just turns in all-pro season after all-pro season after all-pro season.
He just performs. He just performs, and you just can't ask for more in a linebacker.
He may not have the legs under him in the past, but he definitely can tackle you behind the line of scrimmage. So just put him in a gap, and he'll tackle you.
Yeah, so they're re-signing corner Noah Igbenogane.
Nice.
I remember he was kind of decent last year. Jonathan Jones is another guy that is a pretty solid pickup. He's not going to be a lights out, shut down corner, but he is something solid. And so that's the Commanders for you. That's a good team. They're just solid, and I think really the only other teams in the NFC East that you got to worry about, obviously not the Cowboys or Giants, just the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
You might split one with the Eagles, but you're probably going to lose both. Other than that, the NFC North, you got wild card locked up if you're the Commanders. You're just banking on some really tragic accidents to happen, injuries to the Eagles. But that team's not far off. I think they're going to be competing, and they're just going to get better and better. They're in their window for sure, and I think they got 3-4 years. So, this is a great start, though. We still have the draft, what they can do in the draft, how they can get better. I don't think they're missing too many pieces, really. It's a pretty solid start. You can't say too much more.
No, yeah, I definitely don't think they're going to be... I don't think they're going to be challenging for the division. I think the Eagles, unless they have a Super Bowl hangover, it's hard to, play that many games and then come back and do it again. Kansas City did it 2 years ago, and then they did back-to-back this last year. But other than that, you haven't seen that in years. No. So it's hard to do. So, especially because they rely heavily on a running back. They have a lot of key players, but teams who rely heavily on running backs, they did really good last year, but that wear and tear, constantly getting hit, may take impact. But I still see the Eagles being the favorites in that division and kind of just rolling through it, like what you said with Dallas and the Giants as their competition. To me, I think the Giants are probably one of the worst franchises in the NFL. It just cracks me up, some of the things they did. Like that Daniel Jones contract, I just laughed when I saw that.
They got potential, and they got history. You can't say they're the worst, but there's some bad ones out there. The Vikings, look at them. They haven't even won a Super Bowl. But, moving on. Let's talk about another team here that, as a Vikings fan, trust me, if you think I'm biased, this isn't biased at all. Another team I think that's winning, Bears. Bears are doing a great job. So they get Caleb Williams, right? They have this young, untested offensive line. And people, I don't know if they were expecting miracles here. Nothing happened last year. They had a terrible offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. They had that Thomas dude, last name Thomas, offensive coordinator step in. It didn't really get any better, but I kind of understand why. They set up the offense in the offseason to operate in a certain way. They have certain plays and all that stuff. So it really never got better. And so, last year they struggled with a bad O-line, bad coordinators, just a bad setup in general. So what do they do this offseason? So they get rid of the coach. They get rid of the OC, obviously. They got rid of the DC. Everything. So they say, we're going to protect Caleb Williams at all costs. So what do? They go out, trade a 4th-round pick for Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney, he's getting a little up there in age, but this guy is a solid guard. Yeah, he got burned in the Super Bowl by playing left tackle, but he's out of position. How can you expect a guard to go to left tackle in the late in the season last year and expect to be good? The rest of that line sucked too. So Joe Thuney, get him back in the guard position. Let that guy eat. He is so good. I think he's awesome. Another guy, Jonah Jackson. They get this guy for the 6th-round pick from the Rams. Now, he was great 2 years ago. He steps in last year, gets hurt. So you don't know what you have. But if he can reclaim that form, Amazing pick. That's your other guard. So they had the left tackle or right tackle who they drafted last year, like 12th overall pick. I forget his name, but either way, solid guy. So they're good at tackle. The other tackle's a little unproven, but I think he had some potential. Obviously, he's not the problem because the Bears would have traded him and got his replacement this year. So, and then the biggest thing on the offensive line that you can get to really just synergize everything, they went out and got the best center this year, Drew Dalman. Great guy, great talent from the Falcons, and really pretty affordable. I mean, 3-year, $42 million, $28 guaranteed. You can't. To me, that's cheap. I think for what he's done, he's doing really good. I mean, so they're clearing up the offensive line here, and I mean, and you still have Roma Dunze, you have DJ Moore, you still have DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's good. He played behind a terrible line with a terrible system. He's not amazing, but he's not bad. He's a great running back. And you still have Roschon Johnson too. I mean, it's a pretty good thing they have on the offensive side of the ball. What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I think they're doing good. I think they made a lot of moves early this year, trying to adjust that offensive line. And we were talking about this earlier off camera. It does take time for that offensive line to kind of gel together to mix. So I do see some stumbles earlier in the season. I guess that's a good thing that we're still playing off. What's it called? Still playing preseason games. So, they get to learn to mix and gel. So I do see some stumbles. I did see a lot last year that Caleb Williams just held on the ball way too long. I mean, even with the, upgrade in offensive line, I mean, this is professional football. Like, you can only hold the ball for so long. So as long as he's been working on that in the offseason and these key pickups that they picked up over the offseason, as long as they click, they start meshing together, I do think that they have the pieces in, like, the pretty positions, wide receivers, running backs. They have, like, those nice pieces with Oduzde. I mean, he's a obvious number one going, long-term with them. And, maybe they'll pick up another wide receiver. DJ Moore's good. But who else did they have? They had Williams. I don't know. Or just
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, Keenan Allen. That's who I was thinking. I think he was on a 1-year contract. Is he still with them?
Yeah, he just last year of his contract. He's a free agent.
Okay, he's a free agent now. Okay, so I think that they could probably get another wide receiver in there. But I think I do like what they did on offense, and especially they had a good defense last year as well. So I think they addressed the right side of the ball so far, and we'll see what they do in the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they still got a top 10 pick this year. I think they do a lot better just because Caleb Williams holding on to the ball so long. You look at who his new head coach is, who's going to be running the offense, Ben Johnson. You think about what he did with Goff. Now, Goff had started a game off with 20 straight completions. You don't do that by holding on to the ball. He was getting the ball up fast, precise. So we're going to know if Caleb's really getting into that offense and kind of learning it, if he's getting the ball out fast, which Ben Johnson's going to create the plays. It's going to be there. If he doesn't take it, that's up to him. Another thing that the Bears did too, and I just want to touch on this, that caps off this offseason where I think, they don't have too many weaknesses outside of the offensive line. They went out and got Grady Jarrett from the Falcons. Great interior D-line guy. And then they got Dio Odingboy, I don't know. He's from the Colts. He's actually really good, too. He's an edge guy. So I really like that. They had a solid defense. Their defense has really never been the problem. I mean, they got Kyler Gordon back there. They got so many guys back there, Brisker, that are just solid. I mean, I see him twice a year. The only time I watch a Bears game, obviously. And the defense is never the problem. I mean, they're clicking back there. So I think that's really good. Really good for them. Good pickups.
Yeah, Ben Johnson. I forgot about that. But yeah, I've been texting my buddy Alex, who's a big Chicago Bears fan, the whole year, going like, this is your guy, this is who you need to pick up. I think they did a really good job with that. I think hopefully he's going to lead their offense. He's going to capitalize on all the key pieces that they have, all the young key pieces. They're a fairly young team. So I think they did a good job this offseason, and hopefully they get, maybe not hopefully in your eyes, but maybe hopefully they get a run for the NFC North.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm here to see good football. I mean, at the end of the day, every year would I love to see the Minnesota Vikings win every Super Bowl? Yeah, what fan wouldn't? However, I am just so tired of seeing pitiful ball, all this tanking, terrible games. I mean, it's tough enough to watch the Jaguars, the Titans, the Patriots, all these teams, and it's just like, oh gosh, like what a waste of NFL season. I want to see the big games. I mean, I don't want to have to wait till playoffs to see it either.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on from there, now this is going to seem like I'm favoring my team. But I really do think that the Minnesota Vikings are one of these teams that are winning free agency this year. I mean, they go out, they set kind of clear expectations of what they need. We saw it in the playoff games against the Rams. The offensive line wasn't there. We lost our 2 tackles during the season due to injury. I think Brian O'Neill was actually playing, but he ended up getting hurt that game.
Mm-hmm.
And so our guards, interior guards, were never that good to start this season. And same with our center. We've been kind of trailing this guy along for the last 5-6 years because he was average, and you're just like, there's other things to fix. Well, now that we have the offensive weapons here. We got a solid, wide receivers. 1, 2, and 3. We got Aaron Jones back there holding it down. We could use another running back in the draft, you could say, but what we did this offseason, I just love. I mean, I think it's just amazing. So we go out and we get Ryan Kelly and Will Fries. So going back to kind of the Jonah Jackson thing with the Bears, yes, these guys were injured last year, but Ryan Kelly's been a stud since he entered this league. He is just an absolute stud. Every time he's on the field, he is ready to go. He was the heartbeat of the Colts offensive line. He was great. I love the deal. We got him at 2-year, $18 million, $9 million guaranteed. So honestly, if it doesn't work out, so be it. I think he's 32. He's not someone we're going to build with long term, but he's a great guy for where we are. We're kind of in a little window, depending on really, a few other factors we can get into, but I think he's a great pickup. Another guy, Will Fries, I just mentioned him. Great contract if he can play like he had been playing. Last year he had 5 games, went down with the injury. The year before he had a fully healthy season, just played absolutely great that year too. So I think he was the top guard in this free agency, arguably, and I think he's going to fit in. So with that being said, I think if we can get our tackles healthy again, we get the guard and center thing down, I mean, we're really just left with our mediocre guard, Blake Brandell, at left guard. So I really think this team has a lot of potential. We re-signed Aaron Jones, and this is the only thing I'm going to kind of say about him. I like him for the certain price, right? 2-year, $20 million is a little steep for a guy that's 31 as a running back and played 17 games last year for the second time in his career. So, and he was still dealing with nagging injuries. So, he's not the home run threat he used to be. Is he a good veteran presence? Yes. Does it cost that much for leadership in the locker room? I don't know. So, going off that, I think those guys are really good too. He's solid. We just need to draft another running back in this draft to put behind him to develop, and I don't think that's a big problem. But he is good. He's going to be great for J.J. McCarthy. I think it's very good to surround him with veteran guys so they're not learning on the fly with him. The only one learning on the fly is J.J. So I think that's another great thing too, since we're going to probably roll with him. Another thing, on the defensive side of the ball, one thing you noticed we lacked, and I kind of got in the habit of saying this last year, is our defense was really great. I mean, honestly, I thought they played really well. Stephon Gilmore is an aging corner. Yeah, he kind of showed his age at the end of the season, but he honestly did pretty well for what we signed him for. Shaq Griffin stepped in, played a really good year, I expect him to get a decent little contract, coming out of this, off season and playing. I'd love to have him back personally, but I don't know if he'll be affordable for us. But I think we had the only thing missing on our defense that I'd have to say was defensive line. Jerry Tillery, Harrison Phillips, Jalen Redmond. Yeah, they're good. Yes, like they're not bad, but we needed more. We needed more power. We needed more punch. So what did we do? We went out and got Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Now, same thing with, I guess this is what the Vikings love. They want to go get guys that were injured last year, and we're going to pick them up. So, I don't know. One of these guys, I could honestly say I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come in and just, I'm pretty high on them. I could see them not being up to my standard of what I think. Mm-hmm. But I do think Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave in the middle of that defense, and you got Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard on another side. I mean, that is a dream D-line. I mean, that thing is going to wreck. So our corners don't have to be that good. Not like we have much this year. But so far, I think it's a great pickup. And Jalen Redmond and Harrison Phillips as depth on that defensive line. We got Dallas Turner coming off the edge too. I mean, that is a deep, deep line. And I think it's going to be really nice for us. I mean, so I'm really happy with that. We went out and got Byron Murphy back. We paid top dollar for him, but I do like it. He was a great slot corner, and I think that's just perfect. I mean, he played great last year. He plays really well into Flores' system, and I really trust Flores too because he knows the guys that are going to work in his system, and I credit him for that a lot. He knows the guys that are going to work. So I think that's good. We got this Isaiah Rodgers from the Eagles. Now, everyone keeps saying, oh, he's a fourth-string corner from on the Eagles. Well, if you look at the first three on that team, they were pretty good. I mean, Cooper DeJean, Kenyon Mitchell, sure, they're rookies, but they don't play like rookies. They play way better than that. Then you had Darius Big Play Slay. I mean, a seasoned vet like that, really going to be hard to start over that guy. So you got Isaiah Rodgers. I think he's another slot corner, which I kind of didn't really love. I wish we would have got more of an outside guy that's going to handle that, like a Shaq Griffin or, just all these other guys that would play more outside than slot. But slot's got to be in more and more important these days with, how many times, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, these guys are always filling into the slot now. You're going to need someone to cover these guys. I hardly have to, they're not lining up as outside as much. So that's another thing we can, go over. And then we got Theo Jackson and Harrison Smith safeties. I love this Theo guy. I think he's got a lot of potential. Brian Flores even said it last year. He kind of felt bad that we didn't give him the opportunities, but when he did, he ran with it. So Harrison Smith, I love this guy. He is what a Viking is. But it's kind of like I hope this D-line's going to do a lot of work because I don't think he can hold on like he used to, but honestly, the guy has great knowledge. He is an anchor on this team. I love having him. I mean, I can't say anything more about him. What do you think, Blake?
I mean, I think you said it all. I'm interested in the quarterback situation for sure. I know I've seen that the Vikings have been linked to Aaron Rodgers quite a bit. I'd be interested to hear what you had to say about that. But, I mean, just that conversation in general is like, why are they linked to Aaron Rodgers? Because I don't see Aaron Rodgers sneaking in to be a backup quarterback. I see him wanting to basically, end his career on a team, maybe take over what Brett Favre did. But I'd be interested in that. And then if they do have him, be a starting quarterback, does that make you start to worry about your first-round draft pick of last year? Like, I know he got in, like, there was high regards of him coming into the league. A lot of people saying, like, he was, like, the best quarterback they've ever seen. I know his coach, now the coach of the Chargers, was saying he's the best quarterback he's ever seen out of Michigan. Behind Tom Brady, of course. But it'd be interesting because if you're having, I guess last year he couldn't play because he was injured. But this year, after he had a whole like off season to practice and stuff to bring in Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know. I think he's funny now, but I don't know if that's who you want him to be learning after. But anyways, I'd be interested in that. I do think, yeah, you guys did a bunch of stuff on the offensive line, just to see how that meshes. You guys have all the studs at wide receiver. You got the best wide receiver in the game, arguably. And then, yeah, running back situation. Definitely, I do think you need to get a young person in there, just for fresh legs. Defense side of the ball, I do like the signing of Harrison. You know, in his prime, he was one of the best safeties in the league, and it's nice to still see him, you know, getting contracts and seeing him still playing. So, yeah, I think the Vikings are going to be good next year. I think it's going to be heavily dependent on the quarterback. I think you guys have built a good team around him, and you've definitely given him the pieces where, like, he doesn't have to do everything. He can, you know, let his playmakers make the plays. So I think it's a good place for him to learn and to pick up, and you know, maybe you guys can have another, you know, 10-win team.
Yeah. No, and the Aaron Rodgers thing, that I think it's kind of funny because I don't believe in him stepping in, and also at the price tag that I've heard he wants. I mean, I heard he wants a 2-year, $90 million contract, so average around $45 million a year, which I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it at all. I wouldn't be interested at that. And everyone has a price for how much I want them to be on our team. Aaron Rodgers, I would pay him $15 million. I'd give him $15 million, a 1-year $15 million deal. Just sit, you know. But I do want, going forward, our whole thing is starting J.J. McCarthy. Because Aaron Rodgers, he's not the same guy. Russell Wilson's not the same guy. These guys are really not going to take you there unless you are just have an elite defense. I mean, it's simple as that. And Russell, worse than Aaron Rodgers, they're just not guys going to get you over the hump. So we're in a window right now, and I would say with our team, where we need to start just developing the talent we have. We can't just do this every free agency, spend all this money. We got to get better at drafting, but we also just got to let these players play as well. So J.J. McCarthy, I think the team sees a lot of potential in him. Last preseason game he really kind of rocked it. And, you know, he had a full year to sit and kind of learn the offense, and it's going to be the same offense this year. We haven't changed up the coordinator or the head coach who's calling the plays. So I think it really helps out, and if we were more scared about it, we wouldn't have let Nick Mullins walk. We wouldn't have let Daniel Jones walk. We wouldn't have let Sam Darnold walk. And, you know, that's the thing, is they had that much confidence in JJ, and I'm going to have it too. I mean, if they have it, I have it. You know, and Sam was really good too. I mean, he was put in a solid year minus the last 2 games. It was really nice to see. Really nice to see a guy not named Kirk Cousins playing quarterback for your team. So,
I think you guys should, I mean, I know this is kind of it's a mean thing to do to the player, but for like a team standpoint, it would have been funny to see the Vikings put a tender on Sam Darnold. That would have been pretty funny, so that like the teams like the Seahawks who ended up, you know, signing him, they would actually have to like trade a pick in order to get him. Franchise tag. Sorry, that's what I was looking. That would have been funny to franchise tag him, just to see how that played out, to see if, you know, the Vikings could get any extra picks or something in order to like move forward to further build the team. But it ended up not happening. But it would have been interesting to see that. I'm sure Darnold probably wouldn't have been excited, especially because I do think the Vikings want to, you know, build McCarthy. Like, why would you invest a first-round draft pick in him, especially with all the praise he got, and then just bench him? So it would have been interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, with the franchise tagging, I think it was $42 million. You guys got him for, what, 33 million?
Yeah, something like that.
It's $55 million guaranteed. That's kind of what teams were wanting to do anyways. And who knows really what the market was on him. I really think more people should have really been in on Sam.
Mm-hmm.
You know, namely the Steelers. The Steelers are a team where They got the weapons this year. They got DK. They got George Pickens. They got Pat Fryermuth. They got some weapons. And they have a badass defense like they have every single year. They have the type of defense that can carry you. If TJ Watt's healthy, I mean, that team could do anything. I mean, look how far they got with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I mean, terrible, very below average quarterback play, and everyone thought they were halfway decent just because they didn't turn over the ball. But, I mean, let's be honest. The MVP on offense last year was Chris Boswell, kicker. So, not too impressed with that. I mean, this is, for the sake of the argument, I just wish Sam could be on that team. Not saying, I think Seahawks could be a really good place for him as well. But moving on, let's go to the next and final winner that we have here, the Bills. So the Bills go out, they get their quarterback, Josh Allen, and it's crazy to think. I think it's a great deal. I mean, he is worth every single penny. He is everything to that team. So it was a great contract, and like 6 year, $330 million. What is that? Like 55 million a year. That's great. I mean, it seriously, it sounds crazy, but 55 million is guys, like Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, they're only making a couple million less than that a year. This contract 3 years down the road is going to look amazing, especially when you stack it up against guys like Dak Prescott, where his cap hit next year is like in the 70 million range. I mean, it's insane. Dak is just not a good quarterback. So, but they keep playing kick the can on him with this contract. So I really think he is just right in the middle of the road. I mean, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow getting paid like him. And Jalen Hurts, that's insane if you think he's actually worth that. But, I just think it's a good contract for him. Another thing they did, they went out, re-signed this Khalil Shakur. He played great for him. I mean, you can't say much more about him. He is who he is. And I think he's a borderline 1,000-yard receiver. He was the glue last year. He came in clutch. And so you couldn't say he was just a great talent. Josh Palmer's another guy that they got from the Chargers. This guy is kind of a lot of hype, not a lot of anything to show for. So to give him 3 year, 36 mil, I thought was a little insane. But I don't know. These guys know more than I do. So, that's another thing. I think it could work out great. They still got Keon Coleman holding it down there. So Josh Allen already kind of proved he doesn't need good wide receivers to be good. I mean, he could throw to anybody. He elevates the team. He's like Patrick Mahomes in that sense. He could be throwing it to, me and him, and he'd be good. So he'd be putting up decent numbers with us even. So, and we're not good wide receivers. So
you forgot Joey Bosa too.
Yeah, we're getting to him. So that's on the offensive side of the ball. I like it. They got Ty Johnson. They re-signed him 2 year, $5 million. Still got Dalvin Cook back there. I like it. So on the defensive side of the ball, they got Joey Bosa. So he is a high risk, high reward guy. It's a 1 year, $12.6 million with 12 guaranteed. You can go up to 15.6, with incentives and stuff like that. He's a great talent when he is healthy, and that's where he's been negated for a long time. So I'd love to see him get healthy again, and he is getting older though. So who knows about that? Michael Holt. I know he was from the Rams, and I remember watching him at the Vikings-Rams game, and he is a game wrecker. He is a great defensive edge guy. He is just solid. He is very solid. And for the price, 3 year, $24 million, it's worth up to 3 year, $24 million. So I really think they got great value with that guy. He is, even if he is just a role player, defensive edge guy, I think he's solid. So another guy they re-signed or just signed. I thought he was on the team. Gregory Rousseau, he's definitely on that. Yeah, extension. So 4 year, $80 million contract. That guy's really good. He's a solid player. They got Ed Oliver still. They're just humming away in Bills land, and I think it's great. And they got another defensive tackle, Larry Ogunjobi. I don't know. He used to play on the Vikings too, but came from the Steelers. that's a great talent too. So D-line just got way better. They signed Terrell Bernard, linebacker. He's a really good guy too. He was holding it down as linebacker last year, so really worth the money. And they got the guy that just can't die, DeMar Hamlin. And don't cancel me for that.
No, I think definitely that the Bills did. I see they're so potent on offense. Like I don't really think like they need to do much. I think he kind of said it all that he doesn't really need anybody to throw it to. Like you find someone put on the field and he'll get it to him in the key moments. But really, I mean, it really is all Josh Allen. Just run when he runs the ball, when he needs to run, or he'll do it. And then when he needs to pass the ball, he'll do it, and he just puts it on a dime. I actually saw that in an interview he was laughing about how he didn't go for the record for the biggest contract, and I think he's only $5 million off. And his quote was like, you know, what's the difference? Like, what is $5 million gonna do? You know, when you're making $60 million. And I kind of like when quarterbacks do that, just because I know it's like a respect thing. Like, hey, I want to be image. You know, like I am the best player. I think myself as the best player. Like what I put on the field shows that I'm the best player. So I want to have like the largest contract. It's kind of like a reward to like show that you're the best, that your team thinks you're the best. But I personally like it when they do take less money because football is the ultimate, you know, team sport. And so whatever you don't take personally, you can spread the wealth amongst your team. So I think that actually is a good, you know, I like when players do that. And something I do think, I don't really know most of those players that were signed on defense. I know Joey Bosa, and I know he's coming back from an injury. But I think really they just need to upgrade a defense. Like I normally they are around one of the top teams for defense, but I think that's where they need to spend most of their money and like not just be like good, but they need to be great because they get to the AFC Championship every single year, and who do they face? Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and they lose every time. Well, we've seen it twice now. When you put pressure on Mahomes, I think he's still rated like the number one quarterback under pressure, but still, when you see what the Eagles did to him last year, or this year in the Super Bowl, and what Tampa Bay did to him a couple years ago in the Super Bowl, I mean, when he's running around with his head cut off, like, even he can't be Superman. So, we've seen the duel. Like, we've seen when they go back and forth, offense per offense, like, they're matched, they're just perfect. You know, it's basically whoever gets the ball last is going to win. And so they need to upgrade their defense side of the ball so that when it does come to it, like, they can stop Mahomes. Because I think they will with it. If they have Josh Allen behind center, like, they're going to have the offense that can score. What they really need to focus on is stopping the other offense from scoring. I think Allen can, you know, do whatever he needs to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. So, I think they're in the right step on defense for sure. But moving on, losing teams. Who's losing free agency these days? I think it's pretty obvious who's losing. Let's start this off. San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
We knew they were always kind of heavily inflated with people that they're paying, and everyone was kind of asking, how are you paying the salary cap on Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Debo, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, all these defensive guys that they have, and you're like, where's the money coming from? Well, because you're not paying Brock. But either way, so I think we're just kind of seeing the blow up of that, and even Brandon Ayuk got a contract, which looking terrible. I mean, it's straight up looking terrible. But that's not what we're commenting on this year. We're talking about the kind of blow up that they're having. So the losses are not going to outgain any of the additions that they're getting this year. And it's not like they're doing anything crazy. I mean, they're signing a tight end, Luke Farrell, for a 3-year, up to $20 million contract. What are you doing? I mean, you already have George Kittle. You're not a 2 tight end set. This Luke Farrell guy, I don't like his production. I just don't believe in it. So I think that was a kind of a questionable one on top of kind of what they've been doing. I mean, they haven't really signed a marquee name yet, not even a pretty good depth guy. So this year I'm just going to have to say losers for now unless they make some make some stuff happen, but just not really feeling what they got going on.
Yeah, San Fran's definitely a loser, and I think it's just kind of like the end of an era. I think that Shanahan and their GM are trying to kind of savor what they can. I think they made a lot of big deals because they have like a ton of. I mean, they had a ton of studs, or at least in that offense, they were studs, and then on defense, I mean, San Francisco's just always been good at D. And I think that they just had so many good players over the years. They've been good for so long that, I mean, they all needed to get paid. Their Super Bowl window has kind of closed with the current team that they had on their roster. And so they kind of need to go back and, like, retool with younger players. So I do see a dip kind of in their performance next year. And then the Brock Purdy thing is just, like, interesting to me. Because, kind of like what I was just saying, they have studs at like every position. So he kind of fell into like a perfect scenario. Like, is he really as good as like people say he is? Or is it just like the reflection of like having a great offensive minded coach and having the studs to back it up? I mean, at every position, like their offensive line is anchored by probably one of the best, if not the best, left tackle in Trent Williams. They had Debo, we'll just say, and Ayuk, so like two stud wide receivers, and then they also had like the best running back. Him and Saquon like go 1 and 2 the last like 2 or 3 years. So like they're retooling, like I mean to put that team together, one is just like ridiculous to get all those studs, but nothing came out of it. Now they have to pay their quarterback, and hopefully he kind of does what Allen did and is like, hey, but probably not. And I hope not. As a Seattle fan, I hope he takes a huge contract so then they can't pay those players. But yeah, San Fran's definitely a loser, but I think it's more just of like the timing. Like you can't pay everyone. We tried to do it with the Legion of Boom, and it just kind of like fell apart because people were aging and just stuff happened. So I think they're kind of doing the smart thing, get ahead of it, get rid of those players while you can, and kind of retool. But yeah, I think they'll be down for a year or two.
Yeah, but great coaching. I think Robert Saleh coming back in the mix. That's when they were the best at defense. Huge. This is a team with great coaching. I have no doubt that they retool this year. They draft a great class, and they might have a down year this year, but they're never out of it if the game's being played.
Do they have a first this year?
I thought so.
Because like when they traded Trey Lance, they gave up like 3 firsts. And so because I'm sure
no, they never gave up 3 for.
Trey Lance they gave up 3.
That was a long time ago. I think that was like 4 years ago.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, because if Trey Lance, because Trey Lance and Purdy were the same draft class.
Yeah.
So, and then I also don't know like the 5th year option. Like, do you only get that for the first number of players, or like because he was Mr. Irrelevant, so he was the last pick in the draft. So
I think that's only for first rounders.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, is that okay? So yeah, so maybe that was 2 years ago. And yeah, because they had never mind. You're right. They had a first round last year because.
Yeah, Ricky Persil.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do believe they have one this year as well. So.
Okay. And they were and so they'll be a decent one too this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they got some potential. Moving on, Texans are another team that really I'm trying to find the why in some of what they're doing. They go out and trade Laramie Tunsil. Yeah, you get some draft capital. And they also get rid of guard Kenyon Green. They send him on down to the Eagles to get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which he is good. I mean, I'm not going to take away from that, but you need offensive line. I mean, I think Stroud got sacked 52 times last year. That's not helping a guy who's really had a sophomore slump. You don't want that guy taking any more hits. The injury bug's already biting them hard. So I'm not liking what they're doing in terms of trading these players away. And, they go and they're kind of trying to patch things up. Because I know they're kind of hosed at the wide receiver spot. But going and getting Christian Kirk for what his salary is, I don't know if that really puts you over the edge. I think Christian's a great number 2 wide receiver, behind Nico Collins, but it's one of those things where not for the price. Not for the price. I'm not loving it. So, they go and trade today. They go and get Ed Ingram from the Vikings. This guy didn't even play for us. That's how bad he was. I mean, this guy, I don't know. We've seen him for 3 years now. I just don't see the potential. And they gave up a 6th-round pick. So if you're trying to replace, Kenyon Green with that, good luck. They signed Laken Tomlinson. He's not bad, but he's just not who he was.
He was horrible for us. Like, he was our interior. Lincoln Tomlinson, yeah, he was our right guard.
Yeah,
and now yeah, he did horrible for us. Like, we were the laughing stock of the league with how bad our interior guards were. And Lincoln Tomlinson was him and Forsyth, who also signed with another team. But anyways, they were not good.
And so, I mean, it's just this offseason, they're kind of going on this trend where they're just picking up older guys where, a couple years ago you would have been, like, just ecstatic to have these guys on your team. But, Mario Edwards, Derek Barnett, Sheldon Rankins, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, not saying they're bad players at all. I believe, though, in my heart, that these guys are past the prime of their football. They're not getting better. So, I don't know if these guys set you up for success down the road. So, I'm just not loving it this year.
Yeah, I haven't really been paying too much attention to what the Techs have been doing, but from what you've been saying and what I can remember from the end of last year, I don't really see so much growth in this team. It seemed like 2 years ago, they were like the Redskins of this year. You know what I mean? Like, they had the new shiny quarterback who took them to the playoffs and was doing all this great stuff. Then he kind of has a sophomore slump. And then he had Stephon Diggs this year. He ends up getting hurt. I think Tank Dell, he's a good wide receiver. He tore his ACL right late in the season too, so he's not going to start with them next year. And then, the Eagles are so stacked at every position, so they gave up probably their better safety that they have, but they have young talent behind them, so they were kind of expendable. But I guess maybe they're gonna just try to do the same thing, like build a strong defense. I know that their head coach is a good defensive-minded coach, so now they got a strong safety, they got a good defensive line. Unfortunately, just because of the injury bug and then just free agents signing to 1-year deals, I can't really think of who they have on offense that really scares me off the chart. So I don't really see them doing much, but I think they're in a weak division too, aren't they? They're in the same division as the the Jaguars.
Jaguars, Colts, who else? I always forget that other team.
Yeah, so they're just process of elimination. I mean, Jacksonville is just horrible. The Colts are horrible. I can't even think who the other team is. But you might just make the playoffs just because your division is bad. So you're just the best of the worst team. So one and done in the playoffs. But I don't know. I don't really see them doing much. But yeah.
Yeah, not just loving what they're doing this year. So. Houston Texans. We just listed. Oh, Jacksonville Jaguars. So
Jacksonville, Houston, Colts, and then who's the fourth one?
Houston.
No, just hit Houston.
Oh, Tennessee.
Process of so they're gonna make the playoffs, but they're not gonna do anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, I agree with you. It's just a weak division, so you could have got a lot stronger, and you're really not worried about your division. You're worried about the playoffs, how you're going to get past the Ravens, how you're going to get past the Chiefs here, the Bills. You got bigger fish to fry.
I don't see that happening.
The next team I want to point out here is the Tennessee Titans. This... I kind of wonder where they're thinking they are as a team standpoint. They've had some studs in the years on defense, defensive line, linebackers. Harold Landry was a really good guy. So I thought they were drafting some really good talent. Everything's kind of getting blown up this year. Um, so I'm just, obviously D Hop was a big part of that team. He's gone. They had that Nico guy who was wide receiver. It was really actually showed a lot of promise. And he's off the team. So you got Calvin Ridley for a price tag on him. And he's good, but he can't. He's not a solo operator. So starting this off, they go and I phrase that, I say all that stuff to say, hey, what are you doing? So if you're gonna roll with Levis, get him some weapons. You haven't done that yet. Or bulk up the offensive line, right? That's a good idea. Well, they go out and sign Dan Moore Jr., 4-year, $82 million guy, $50 million guaranteed, $30 million in the year one. Now, this guy's PFF grade, I just looked at it, not good. He was like the 46th tackle this year, and he allowed 12 sacks last year alone. How is this guy getting a contract like that? That's what I want to know. But, moving on, even just from that, Kevin Zeitler, great guard. I mean, 1 year, $9 million. I want to highlight that. I think it's good. But what are you doing? I mean, I guess if you're setting up a line for any quarterback, you should have some defensive or offensive line stalwarts on there. Just to always have a solid line and get that run game going. Get Tony Pollard kind of maybe carrying the ball and carrying the offense a little bit. But so they go out and get Draymond Jones, who you guys cut this year. I don't think he's played too well.
He was a cap casualty. He actually did, looking at his stats, he actually had a good season for him, but the contract we signed him to, actually when we signed him, it was the most money that we've ever assigned to a defensive player. So we just signed him to too big of a contract. The stats were there, but not to the point where he deserved that contract. So I think that's a decent signing, but yeah.
Yeah, Sebastian Joseph Day, he's okay. Cody Barton seems okay. And then, for wide receiver, they go out and get Van Jefferson, who played on the Steelers. Just kind of why. A lot of this, and obviously this can change depending on what they're going for and how this free agency plays out. It's only been day 3, but it's concerning. I mean, day 4. So I just have low hopes for him.
Yeah, I don't see them doing anything. I don't think Will Levis is the answer. He hasn't done anything the last 2 years. And then, other than that, yeah, Pollard, you said they're running back. I could probably name 3 players on that team. I honestly don't see them going anywhere.
Yeah. So, moving on from them, let's get on the Saints. Saints are a team, to me, they've been just in cap hell for the last 4 years, 5 years. Really towards the tail end of Drew Brees' career. It seems like every year they got to restructure, do some crazy stuff with all the contracts just to kind of get some right guys in the system. And you go out, you get Derek Carr, you're paying him a lot of money, and really Derek Carr is kind of like with everything else, but his best football's behind him. He's not going to do anything, and you don't have the roster to win. So if they were going to try blowing it up, I think this would be a good time. You got Kellen Moore, head coach, just starting. It's really going to be hard for him to go in there and make some changes. But here's what they're doing so far. So they got this Jawan Johnson, and I think he had 545 yards last year, and he was like the leading wide receiver for that team. That's concerning. That's concerning that this guy just got 3-year, $30 million for that kind of production. $21 million guaranteed. I mean, I don't love it. And then, another guy they're kind of bringing, and it's kind of, they're doing the whole Vikings with Harrison Smith thing. They're bringing back Cam Jordan for his 15th season. Now, this guy, he has been great. I mean, throughout his whole, I've hated him as a Vikings fan because he would wreck our line in the playoffs. But that's a guy. He's played his best football. He's still playing at a pretty high level. I just I'm not loving that. And another guy they pair up with Cam Jordan on the other end, Chase Young. And Chase Young is a guy who, ever since out of college, has been, even in college, has just really played on hype. This guy, you look at him, he's a freak of nature. He is built in a lap. He is just everything you would want in a defensive end. He went to defensive end university, Ohio State, really polished product. So he goes to the Commanders, had some decent up and down years, and I get where the curiosity killed the cat, right? I would have bid on that too. I would have been the 49ers and said, you know what, I want this guy on my team. Mm-hmm. But this guy has just been injured year after year, even playing a full season. I think in his whole career he's had 22 sacks total, and he's played 6 years. And out of all those 6 seasons, he's only played 2 seasons where he's played more than 10 games. So, the Saints signed him last year to kind of a prove-it deal. Mm-hmm. He doesn't prove it in my eyes. He has 4.5 sacks. You watch the tape. This guy is just doing everything he's done in his past, where he just kind of seems like he's taking plays off, and you just can't be doing that. And he could just be great. I mean, we're always going to kind of... I always call him just the great value Jadeveon Clowney, right? I mean... Some guy that had just, unreal expectations. We really all did. But even to, Jadeveon, even say Clowney has had a great career, as a middle-of-the-pack guy. But this Chase Young guy, he is just below that. So for them to go out, give him 3-year, $51 million, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, seriously. I didn't see it, and definitely not to warrant that. I mean, if you're looking at other guys that just got paid at defensive end, you got Leonard Floyd, who had 8.5 sacks last year, who's playing great. He's averaging 9 sacks in his last 5 seasons. Why not get a polished guy? I mean, if you're looking to waste money, waste it on the right people. I would even went after Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, guys like that. I would have gave them a flyer over this guy. At 3-year 51, I just can't handle it. So, to me, I'm out. This is a Shark Tank, but you just got me on a soapbox there. But the one thing I will say that they did good, they got Justin Reed, the Super Bowl winning safety. I always thought this guy was just a solid player just coming into the league. So, really got to say he's one of those people where I have a lot of faith in him. So, I mean, what do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I think the Saints are just one of those teams that these last couple of years don't really have any direction. They're in and out of coordinators. Like you said, they're always up against the cap limit. And I think it's just because they see something shiny and they just have to sign like this player to a deal just because he has a name. And there's really no direction of where the team is going. And so I'd be interested in it. I mean, the Saints... they had their heyday and with Drew Brees, but ever since he left, they really haven't had a plan of how to execute. And Kellen Moore, to me, just doesn't really excite me as a head coach. He was kind of he didn't excite me much as a player either. And so I'm interested to see where they're going with their team. I think, this is a team that probably should have just cut majority of their team and just start from scratch. And kind of just try to rebuild and retool from the bottom up. But anyways, I'm interested to see where they're going. I don't really project them doing much, but yeah.
Yeah. So going on, those were our losers. Here we got another section here. Decent. We're gonna call it decent. So people that aren't really killing it, but they're not losing it either. And I think with what they've got going on, they're making the correct decisions. So, to start it off, I'll let you break this down, Blake. The Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, the Seattle Seahawks are an odd one. I think that they had a plan going into the offseason. They wanted to sign Geno Smith. Like a lot of other teams, our offensive line wasn't that strong, but I think all of the players were there. We had a number 1 wide receiver. We had basically 1A wide receiver and 1B with JSN and DK Metcalf. We knew Tyler Lockett was going to be a cap casualty. He kept pushing his contracts. We kept adding years and stuff, and his cap hit was just getting bigger and bigger. We knew eventually we were going to have to pull that Band-Aid off. Mike McDaniel, towards the end of the year, had us as like a top 10 defense. And so we knew, when we hired him, we wanted to be defense first. And then I thought we had the offensive players in like the scoring positions to actually do something. It was just that darn offensive line we could never figure out. And we were really hoping that this offseason was when we were going to address it. And I think the DK trade was huge when he requested that. And Gino, when he requested that as well. I think that was pretty big. I think we were talking off camera. I think that actually had to do with the Ryan Grubb firing. I think that DK and Gino wanted to throw the ball. And when we fired him and told the team that we wanted to go to more of a running style, Gino and DK saw that their stats were going to go down, and they didn't want to do that. Gino, since he's especially towards the end of his career, and then DK, he just got $150 million in his contract. He wants to play like a number one wide receiver. He doesn't want to be blocking all the time, and really we don't want him to be blocking all the time because he punches all the other opponents. But anyways, yeah. So then we went the other way with Sam Darnold. So I think that was a lateral move. I do think Gino right now probably is better. I think Sam Darnold has a higher ceiling with age. I think as he grows and matures, I still don't really think that that's the answer going forward. I think that they would like to get someone new, but right now he's a good, I wouldn't say bridge, because he's a decent quarterback. I mean, he won the Vikings 14 games, and so I think it's there, but it's just not the exciting pick, So there's that, and then with DK going and Tyler going in the same. Departing. Now we're just left with JSN and Bobo. We just signed, what's his name? Scantling? No.
MVS.
Yeah, MVS.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, we just signed him. I mean, he's a good over-the-top wide receiver, but he's never had I think he's never had more than 600, 700 yards in a season. And he's kind of getting up there in age.
Yeah, and he's played with great quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. In those offenses, you just wonder, if you can't get the yards there, I don't think Sam Darnold's the guy to unlock them by any means. But yeah, no, I think you have a great point there. Sam Darnold, he is more probably unrefined than Gino was. At least you know who Gino was. We still really don't know who Sam Darnold is and who Sam Darnold is outside of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing, too. That you got to keep an eye on. Another thing they did, they went after. They love defense, and I loved watching their defense. They have great team defense. They got DeMarcus Lawrence, who's still playing at pretty high level. He's coming over from the Cowboys. He brings a solid edge presence on that defensive line. And they also re-signed this guy who I really believe is a Seattle Seahawk through and through, Jarran Reed. You can't... I just love watching the guy play. He is just solid as can be. He's not sexy by any means, but he just does his job, and he does it well. Mm-hmm. So those are just guys that I really like. Ernest Jones is linebacker. Re-signed him. I think he was pretty decent, too. So they're going in the right direction, but you're kind of wondering... You're losing marquee players. I mean... DK Metcalf, if you think about it, and your team, would you have given a first round pick for DK? If I could told you you're gonna draft DK this year in the first round, would you be excited? Yes, you would. Mm-hmm. So in a situation like that, it's kind of bittersweet, but it's also kind of a thing where maybe he ran his course there. He really hasn't played like a wide receiver one, like a top 10 guy, and he got just paid like a top 10. So that's another problem with the whole thing with DK Metcalf as well. So, Geno Smith kind of didn't want to resign anyways, so that's fine. And like I said, lateral move. If anything, Sam Darnold's cheaper. You got more draft capital. They're going to be rolling into the draft this year with a lot of picks. a first rounder, 2 second rounders, 2 third rounders. I don't believe they have a fourth, but I do know they have 2 fifths, or they don't have a sixth. They have a fourth and 2 sevenths. So they got plenty of picks to get other guys to fill these spots. But one thing I think they ought to be doing, going after that offensive line and relying on that run this year, but also getting a wide receiver for Sam to throw to outside of JSN, who I think is great, and just kind of letting him cook a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Definitely a lot of talent on that team. I would say, just going through a mini rebuild at this point. But I don't think they're too far out of it. I don't think this is end all be all start of a new rebuild. They have the pieces, they have the right coach, so just kind of making, that's why they're in this section. So
I think the DK loss was huge. I think if we would have lost Gino, because he was on the last year of his contract, I can see that. And just going to Pete, he was a Pete guy. Pete basically revived his career. I think DK actually was going to be a huge part of this offense because he is a big body who can block as a wide receiver. So we do want to run the ball more, especially with Kubiak as the OC. And I think you can use that big body to block on the outside, which is what Kenneth Walker loves to do. He loves to bounce it out. And I think that was going to be a huge part of our offense. And then once he was like, I want to get traded, which I don't blame him because he wants to get his money. He wants to be a star. He doesn't want to be a blocking wide receiver. But with what he brings, that speed, that down the field speed, you have to worry about him. And so now we lose that and we lose the blocking ability. I think he was going to be a huge part of that offense on play action, on running the ball. And yeah, that kind of really screwed us.
Right.
Gino, I think if we did the lateral move to Sam Darnold, I would have been all right, I think we're good. We got an extra third out of it, but the DK is what I think was big.
Yeah, and the stats for DK in the last couple of years just don't really warrant the contract, and if you knew you were going to have to pay that contract to him...
He doesn't have the hands. When you see him, you see he's a big body. You want him to be to jump up and get the ball at the top. He's never that dude.
Yeah.
He just drops the balls. He has a lot of big plays in the end. He was always the guy that they went to catch the ball at the last, end zone touchdown. But it was never a, jump ball like Calvin Johnson was so good at. And that was always the comparison they gave him. He just never developed those hands.
Athletic specimen though. Yeah. For sure.
For sure.
Love to see what he does on the Steelers and who's going to throw him the ball. Another team that I got in this iffy kind of decent range is the Rams. I like what they're kind of doing. I personally think the Rams came on late this year as a team where you didn't really expect them to be in it this year. You thought you were seeing the downfall of Matthew Stafford, just kind of maybe the end of an era with the Rams, and but they really turned it around. They got that defense going. I think they just did a lot of great things, and even the offense started clicking, at least only against the Vikings, but. I think they have a lot of hope. Here's where I say I like what they're doing. I don't like what they're doing. Davante Adams. I don't know if this guy, he still had 1,000 yards last year. I don't know if he still is bringing that presence of a number one wide receiver. And, I feel like they're getting rid of Cooper Kupp this year because he's had some injuries. His production is, maybe lesser. But I really thought him and Puka really knew how to work the field together. So I just thought, if it's a money thing, I kind of get it. Although Cooper Kupp was making less. So you signed Devontae to this big contract. You signed Tutu Atwell for 1 year, $10 million. Things that make you say, But, this is kind of all they're doing this year. They haven't really done too much else. I just don't really love kind of the direction where they could be going, but honestly, who knows what they really need going forward. So they re-signed Larrick Jackson and Coleman Shelton. Those are good things. So I think they're solidifying that offensive line. That offensive line was hurt last year. When they started getting healthier, they all got better. Mm-hmm. They also got the Poona Ford guy, so... Like I said, kind of iffy on them. I'd say they're doing decent, but by any means, I just feel like we're lacking. We're just not seeing the over top move that really puts them to be contenders.
Yeah, the Rams are that tricky team because like at the beginning of the offseason, it seemed like they were gonna like not yeah, it sounded like they were gonna start a rebuild. Like they were asking for a first round pick for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
And I mean he's getting old too. Like
Yeah.
I mean, how many more years can he play at the caliber that he's been playing? And I think the Devontae Adams, that's a good sign. I think just because of how they signed him, he was the replacement for Kupp. I do think Kupp was a cap issue. Plus, with the injuries and the history, did help him make that decision. I think Adams and Puka are going to be good together. Both big-bodied wide receivers that can fight for a contested ball. And then their defense they were projected last year to have one of the worst secondaries in the league. And I don't know if it was the secondary play or if it was just how well they drafted on the defensive line. They got Verse, and then they got there's another defensive...
Byron Young.
Yeah, that just killed it. And... like that, I mean, that was your guys' kryptonite. Like, they just, Darnold was just running around with his head cut off in that first playoff game. And, I mean, that came out of nowhere. They were projected to have, like, the worst secondary, and their defense actually was decent to almost, like, really good last year.
Yeah, really stepped up.
Yeah, so, and the Rams are just tricky. They got another one of those great head coaches in Sean McVay that, I mean, especially with Stafford, now he's got, an all-pro, future Hall of Famer, and then they got Puka Nacua on the other end. And then, like, whoever plays running back for them just always seems to have, like, 1,000
Williams.
Yeah.
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Like, so, we're not professionals. They are, so.
Yeah.
So, we always think they're going to do bad, and then they end up, winning 10, 11 games and, making the playoffs, so.
Yeah, great coaching makes up for a lot of it, that's for sure.
It really does.
But next team, we got the reigning Super Bowl champions. I hate to say that about them. Philadelphia Eagles. I like what they're doing this offseason, and that's why I'm saying decent. They are already paying a lot of guys. They got the young guys in the front seven, but they're also losing some players like Brandon Graham to retirement, Milton Williams to the Patriots. He had to go get his money. And a lot of these guys, are kind of going to get their money. And that just happens with a Super Bowl team.
Mm-hmm.
Mekhi Becton is going to get his. So what they did this offseason, they cut Slay. I think they cut Bradbury. They cut some veteran presence at DB, which I didn't really love. I think Dijon and Kenyon Mitchell are the starters. I mean, going forward. It's pretty simple. Dijon's good. But you just love to have that depth, especially if you're going to make another playoff run. And you got a lot of cheap guys on the defensive side of the ball. So the problem is I can see where kind of everything's going. All the money is really on the offensive side of the ball. You got, I think, 4 guys on the offensive line that are just getting paid. You got Landon Dickerson, Malata, the other guy on the left side, Lane Johnson, and another guy. I don't know. But they're all elite. I mean, they're great. They're worth their money. They're really worth their weight in gold. And the center is on a rookie contract, so he's not making money. But A.J. Brown, Devontae Williams, Devontae Smith, they're getting paid handsomely, I might add. Jalen Hurts is getting a lot of money, like we talked about earlier, $55 million. So I get where they're not having that money come in. Saquon's on a really team-friendly deal. But they just signed him to a 2-year extension worth $41 million, and the guy deserves it. I mean, for what he does at the running back position and his receiving ability, he is worth his weight in gold. So what they did this offseason, besides give that extension to Saquon, is they go out and get A.J. Dillon as backup running back. I think he's going to be a good, real, solid, short yardage guy for him. They go out, I think this is a great move for them. They go and get Kenyon Green to replace Mekhi Becton on the right side. That's a guy that's just not, he isn't, he's still on a rookie deal, so he's not costing a lot. I think it's a great pickup, and they just had to give C.J. Gardner for it. So CJ was another guy where he's just a defensive stalwart on that team, a veteran. He was getting paid. So the secondary is going to look young for the Eagles, but I think if that front seven stays ferocious and they go and get more Georgia defensive linemen, they got no problems. So they signed Josh Uka too. This is another move I really like, and Adoree Jackson just for depth. I think these guys are just great depth pieces, and it's what's needed to win a Super Bowl. Another thing they did, re-signed Zach Bond. That guy was amazing at linebacker. He was just holding it down all year. Can't say he was awesome. He was fun to watch too.
Yeah, the Eagles are just one of those teams that just like they draft for the best player. They don't draft for need, but it just seems that whatever they do need, they just somehow get that best player at that position in the draft. I mean, like how DeJean fell to them, I have no idea. How they got Jalen Carter, I have no idea. But
Jordan Davis.
Yeah, like those were already positions of strength. But then you have oh yeah, it's a position of strength, but like they're better players or older, and so they're probably gonna demand higher contracts. Well, hey, here's like a 5-star recruit, like a 5-star player right here that they can get in the first round, and then they get to play behind the starter for a year or two to learn it, and then they go and it's like, hey, now it's your turn, and they don't lose a step, they don't lose a beat. Like what they were in the Super Bowl 2-3 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl this year, and honestly, they're the team to beat this year. Like I don't think they've had any really key players that leave. As long as Saquon can stay healthy, I think that they're the team to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with average quarterback play, I might add.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great. I would say decent offseason for where they are and what they really need to upgrade. I don't think they have to do much. Next team I want to say is doing decent out here is Tampa. So Tampa is in a really good situation where they are. They got the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons. Very winnable division. Baker Mayfield played great last year. So what they want to do, and with all the injuries that they suffered, they have a lot of good pieces. They have pretty well offensive line. Chris Godwin went down, so they re-signed him. I do like that signing. Gives Mike Evans that other guy to throw to. Last year they're throwing to pretty much anyone that they could find outside of a Publix down there. No one knows who those guys were. So getting Chris Godwin back is critical. They could go out and get Hassan Reddick, who I thought was kind of funny. He, goes to the Jets. He wants a big contract. He goes from the Eagles to the Jets, and the Jets were just tumultuous this year, especially on defense. It's kind of a defense where you're like, it's better. It's just so good on paper for it not to be good in real life. It doesn't actually make sense to me. But so Hassan Reddick being there on the edge, he is a great presence. He got Vita Vea. That's always drumming up you pressure. So I just really like that pickup. They get Levante David, re-sign him. He's been just really solid for that team since he got there. So, and they also signed Kindle Vildor. I think he was on the Lions last year. I saw him play. He's a pretty decent dude. So a lot of decent guys. I don't think they're losing a whole lot either. So, I mean, they're upgrading, but they're just not making... They're just kind of paying the people that need paid and not doing too much. I think they just set themselves up really good for going into the draft and kind of just understanding what their needs are. And they're kind of they're going to be right. I wouldn't say they're contenders by any means, but that division's on lock for them, I think. And they might be able to squeak out some playoff wins, and anything can happen any given Sunday. So Tampa's doing all right.
Yeah. Whatever happened to that Riddick situation? So the Jets traded for him, and then
so he held out.
He didn't want to play.
Yeah, he held out for like 6 or 8 weeks or something. He ended up coming back. Just kind of, I don't know. I just don't think.
Did he ever play for the Jets?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he did?
He played a few games. I don't think he did much, but it was also probably one of those awkward things where how do you fit in on a team? I mean, if your teammates with him.
Yeah, like if you're not
do
playing.
you want to play hard next to that guy? Do you really care about that guy? Are you just trying to win? I mean, they had a crazy. That locker room was just.
I think it's just the Jets because I think
It's
it was
the Jets. Yeah, it's the Jets.
It's like, hey, let's trade for this disgruntled defensive end who wants a contract extension. He's not currently getting it with the team he's on, and then you trade for him, knowing he wants a contract, and then you're not going to give him a contract. It's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be talking about Tampa Bay right now, but I just thought that was funny. But yeah, I honestly don't really have anything to say about Tampa Bay.
Nothing.
No.
Yeah, I mean they kind of leave you wanting more, but that's okay. I mean, you can say what you want. Another team here that's doing decent regarding their circumstances is the Denver Broncos. So we all know the kind of elephant in the room with them and why they can't have more. You know, you lost so much by trading for Russell Wilson. You sign him to this huge contract. You already kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball. He still has a $32 million cap hit going into this year, which is, it's just dead money. And it's really hard to compete when you're paying someone that's not on your team. So I think they did a really good job this year, just kind of readdressing some of the things they wanted to get some players back in the door. DJ Jones was a really solid one. They had another guy as well that I was looking at. But either way,
they got Ingram, the tight end.
Yeah, and then they go out and get some weapons for Bo Nix. Evan Ingram, just a really good, underrated tight end in my eyes. And for his contract, I mean, he's 2-year, $23 million, but he's put up some numbers, especially in the Jaguars, way more than Jawan Johnson has, and Luke Farrell.
And their coach knows how to get the ball to the tight ends.
He knows how to scheme it. So I mean, it's a good pickup. They also got Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga from the 49ers, all too well.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, it's solid on defense, really. I mean, you can't, and Denver always has a good defense. So I think that's a team kind of retooling up. What they kind of need to do is just shore up that offensive line just a little bit. But they got some good players. Maybe get another wide receiver, someone that's, a little bit better.
They got his son now, right? Because they traded Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, Marvin Mims Jr. And they just kind of leave you wanting more. And what they really need, a running back. I don't like this Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams. Javonte's on the Cowboys. There's something... I'm not just satisfied. And I'm not even a Broncos fan, but the run game just sucks. I want it better for them. I'm not even a Broncos fan. If anything, I would probably put them on the teams I don't really care for. But that's just me looking in, from the outside looking in. But yeah, just another team having a decent, really kind of off-season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely looking towards the draft. The draft's always fun. I don't watch too much college football, but it's definitely fun when your team drafts a player to go and do all the research on it. And like you were saying, Denver needs a running back, and my understanding is there's some depth in running back this year, so maybe they'll be lucky. I know they're drafting later this year because of because they made the playoffs. But yeah, so I like it. Yeah, they're kind of decent what they're doing, but yeah, definitely they haven't had like a big signing. I think probably Ingram's probably their biggest signing, just based off like who their coach is. What he did with Jimmy Graham. You get a nice, skilled, talented tight end, that can catch the ball. And their quarterback, kind of his critique out of college was that he didn't really throw the ball downfield. Well, you don't need to really throw the ball downfield when you got a good tight end. They're good at those, 5-10 yards outs and things like that. Get him the ball and let him, be a bruiser. So,
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's the end of today's episode. We'll be making more videos and just podcasts pretty much around this stuff. The draft coming up. We're going to follow more free agency, but also kind of get into the nitty gritty on when things kind of settle from free agency, what everything's looking like. Are people getting released? I mean, Vikings are still releasing guys that I thought would be depth pieces this year. So just kind of seeing how everything settles and who's kind of left standing. I mean, still a lot of great free agents that would make a huge difference on a lot of teams left. So going after that and kind of addressing draft needs once that settles down too, because a lot of these mocks have, the Vikings going after defensive line, which kind of seems like a moot point after all the money you put on the defensive line, especially interior. So we'll be making more of those videos and can't wait. Thank you guys.
All right, have a good one, everyone.
There we go. 1 hour and 20.